Right, here we are. We are in the port of Carrara, and we're in Florence and Pisa from the port of Carrara. And this is the kind of line you expect to see in July when you go to Florence. This is the entrance to the Accademia where the Michelangelo works are. And so just going to focus on the Michelangelo works there. As you first come in, the first four things you see are the four slaves, Atlas, and his one of his pietas. So these are the slaves first. This one I think is the bearded slave. I think is the name of this one. Michelangelo lived from 1475 to 1564, so he was 89. He did these slaves in when he was 25, 35, 44 years old, roughly. He was 44 when he did the slaves. He was the Pieta that you're going to see in a minute. He did almost at the end of his life in 1560, so 4 years before he passed away. This is the Pieta that I was just mentioning. It was one of the older works, or one of the works he did when he was older. Now we're looking at the famous David, probably the world's most famous statue. Michelangelo was 29 years old when he did this work of art from a piece of marble that nobody else could figure out how to make work. There was a competition called for in Florence. He was living in Rome working for the Pope, and he came to Florence to compete with who could make something out of that flawed piece of marble. And what resulted was probably the world's most famous statue. It's completed in 1504. And for a long time, it was outside of the main square here in Florence. And I think in the early 1900s, they moved it inside and they created a duplicate, which is out there in the plaza. You'll see it in a minute. And David's been under the roof ever since. Academia before. If you haven't been there before, I'll show you a real quick walk around. Very abbreviated, but just to give you a feeling for what else is there. There are also a number of paintings in there. And I personally prefer the statuary and sculptures to the paintings. But there is a nice hall down there at the end through that door we're going to go in, where there's quite a bit of really nice sculpture works in there. There is a second floor to this academia. It has just paintings in it, and most of them are, I think, a little earlier than 1500s. So there's two major museums in Florence. One is the Accademia that we're in here, and the other is the Uffizi, which is, I don't know, maybe a third of a mile away. And so if you go to Florence, those are the two you need to plan on. Nowadays, you have to buy time tickets. So we had tickets to enter this thing at 11 o'clock. So we had to make our way from the ship quite early on the bus. It's about an hour and 45 minutes roughly from the port of Carrara into Florence. And then after leaving Florence, we drove to Pisa to look at the Leaning Tower, just a quick photo opportunity there, and then headed back to the port in the afternoon. Anyway, that gives you a feel for some of the stuff that's there in the academia. Really, it's mostly priceless Michelangelo works. So we headed outside after we left, and we're going to go to the main cathedral there. Yes, the cathedral is called the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore. And famous bell tower, which you can see sticking up there, and also the baptistry across the street with some of the most famous bronze castings in the world. Ghiberti's Gates of Heaven, which we'll see in just a minute. So here we are entering the streets surrounding the cathedral. That hexagon-shaped building is the baptistry you can see straight ahead, and the main cathedral is off to your left. And it's amazing work. The beauty of the marble work it's really stunning. Again, you get an idea of what the crowds are like. But Florence is a really walkable city. If you go there, you don't need a rental car. You can just get from the airport or train station to your hotel, and you can walk the rest of the city. There's the front. The doors cast on the cathedral are also beautiful. And I didn't get as close up of those as I did of the Ghiberti casting on the baptistry. And again, you get an idea of the crowds that are here in Florence early July during the tourist season. We didn't go inside either one of these today because I've been in them before. We're a little bit pressed for time, but there's the detail of the Gates of Heaven there. Our next stop was heading to the main Piazza della Signoria, and what you see in the background there is Palazzo Vecchio. That's the main square, and you can see the David replica statue there by the door on the right-hand side of that Palazzo Vecchio there. So we're headed over to Ponte Vecchio, which is also one of the most famous landmarks in Florence. It's a bridge across the Arno River that has for years been a place where you buy gold and silver and precious stones and diamonds. That's the view of Palazzo Vecchio across the Arno. Across Ponte Vecchio, and it's just absolutely full of jewelry stores, watch stores, all kinds of high-end stuff. There's no souvenir sellers on this bridge because I imagine the space is quite valuable. Look at all that gold. Jewelry, necklaces, bracelets, you name it. Anyway, that's Ponte Vecchio. That's Florence, folks. The next stop, we hopped back on the bus and drove for about an hour or so, getting to Pisa. We only were there long enough for a photo op. So here you go. Here's the Leaning Tower. They supposedly have it stabilized for the next 200 years, which they've done in the last 24 years, so should be there for a while. Then we hop back on the bus, headed back to the port, and tomorrow we're headed to Portofino, so join us for another video tomorrow.